It's inching closer and closer, guys. The release date of Book of Boba Fett is almost here. 3 days away. Today is the 26th. And lo and behold, we got a present days before the release with the comments that Dave Filoni just made. And honestly, this is why Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are in charge and should remain in charge, because they know what the fans want. Let's get right straight into it. This is Bessie from Star Wars Comics, guys. If you enjoy this video, leave a thumbs up down below and subscribe, because we're going to cover everything there is to cover about the Book of Boba Fett as soon as it releases. So I just finished watching Attack of the Clones, and you can see the seeds of getting Boba Fett to be not strictly a villain even back then in George Lucas's mind. With what we saw in Attack of the Clones by a kid Boba Fett, and of course the Clone Wars series expanded on that a lot more. Definitely George Lucas and Dave Filoni even back then were working towards establishing Boba Fett and the Fetts as anti-heroes, not villains. The culmination of all that can definitely be seen in The Mandalorian, where the Mandalorian himself, Din Djarin, is not a villain but is not a straightforward hero per se. He gradually becomes a hero by caring for Grogu. But now this version of Boba Fett is neither of those as well. You see, like Jango, Boba grew up to be a brutal and feared mercenary, but one with a code of ethics that many could consider honorable in some points. I mean, in the Clone Wars series, we clearly see Boba Fett wanting to exact his revenge on Mace Windu for killing his dad. Although he couldn't at first, I assumed there were many other opportunities before Order 66 where Boba Fett had the chance to go after Mace Windu sneakingly. But he instead left all of that behind him and established a career as a notorious bounty hunter. Of course, who could forget the deleted scene, where it is shown Boba Fett is in a standoff with Cad Bane and Boba is protecting innocent bystanders, while Cad Bane accuses him of helping those in need. You see where this is going. This is definitely heading towards that direction even way back when Attack of the Clones was in 2002, and although things weren't quite clear back then, the Clone Wars series, by the 2010s, you could clearly understand that Boba Fett's character had evolved ever since we first saw him in the original trilogy, where there he was clearly a faceless villain. Ever since he first appeared back then, he wasn't even going to be a major character, but Boba remained in our hearts, and this is what Dave Filoni's comments are in regards to. Dave Filoni, in fact, went on to discuss why he thinks Boba Fett has remained so popular with audiences after all these years, and his answer might shock you. The first real glance that we got of Boba Fett was, of course, in Empire Strikes Back, when he captured Han Solo on the bounty set by Jabba the Hutt. After being introduced to the audiences and being beloved, of course, he saw an untimely death in Return of the Jedi, and an unceremonious at that, and this is why, of course, Boba had to be brought back, because George Lucas kind of mishandled his death back then. I don't know if he didn't realize that Boba was such a major character or not, but he simply quote-unquote died screaming while getting inside the Sarlacc pit. At least that was until The Mandalorian Season 2 finally revealed that Boba Fett had actually survived the Sarlacc pit in canon, of course, and had been hiding out on Tatooine ever since. The Book of Boba Fett will let us know how he survived it and what happened in the aftermath. Now, consider this. If we remove the Clone Wars series and the prequels, because he wasn't the actual Boba Fett he is now, if you take the entirety of his screen time in the original trilogy, Boba Fett only appeared to audiences for around 6 minutes. This is how much screen time Boba Fett has in the original trilogy, donning his Boba Fett suit and his look. So just wrap your head around that first. With this much limited time, Boba Fett was able to not only capture our hearts, but become a pop culture icon. Well, that limited time is all but over with, because Disney now have committed to showing us much more of Boba Fett, with the series just around the corner, starting in Disney Plus in On December 29th, Dave Filoni reveals why he thinks the character has remained so popular after all these years. He spoke about the Book of Boba Fett, talking about the character's design. Dave Filoni says, "I think the design of the costume, especially the helmet, is iconic. The details from the dent on the crown of the helmet, the emblems, scuff marks, cloak, and braids all spoke of a greater story and adventure that the character had experienced. I think it was always fun to imagine what those adventures were. Now we get to tell some of them." This is why Dave remains to be the best, because he knows exactly the pinpoints that he needs to extract stories from. You see, somebody would see Boba Fett and just look at a cool character, but he saw the details. He saw that even back when Boba Fett had a chipped armor, he had braids on the side, he had Wookiee braids on the side, he had scuff marks, he had emblems as per his signature on his right shoulder there, and of course the dent that Dave Filoni himself explained in the deleted scene in the Clone Wars series. Of course, according to Dave Filoni, he got it from Cad Bane. This is why I can't wait to see what stories will Dave and Jon Favreau will be creating in this new series, and a lot more. The Mandalorian Season 3 is coming as well, and no doubt Boba Fett is going to be featured there too. Now with a polished armor and a newfound position as basically the ruler of Tatooine, we're going to get to see how Dave Filoni actually sees Boba now, decades later. Guys, let me know your thoughts about Boba Fett and what made you fall in love with him in the first place down below in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you enjoyed, leave a thumbs up down below, subscribe for dailies. Now you have an awesome day, Star Wars fans. I'll see you in the next video, and may the Force be with you. Until then.